We're very excited today. We have a great agenda, I think, for you. We're going to talk about some new possibilities with new workflows that are enabled by Thunderbolt, which has, of course, been popularized by Apple, but now is propagating. And in fact, at HP, we've adopted Thunderbolt across our entire workstation product line because of the benefits that we think it provides our customers. And so our agenda is that we'll launch off with Jason Ziller, Director of Thunderbolt Marketing from Intel. He is the father of Intel Thunderbolt, so to speak, and he's going to present to you some Thunderbolt technologies, some products, talk about the direction. And then I'll come back and talk to you a little bit more about how we've implemented at HP that technology into our products specifically. We've got our mobile workstations. All of our workstations are here on display, as you can see, clear up to our all-in-one workstation over there on the side. And then we will introduce Abba Shapiro, who is a video professional who will show you a few things about how he uses HP workstations along with Apple systems and Thunderbolt as a great way of blending those two technologies to create great workflows. All right, so without further ado, Jason.
Okay, thanks. As Terry mentioned, Jason Ziller from Intel, and I'll talk to you about Thunderbolt. So I'll give you some theory and overview behind Thunderbolt, and then Abba will show later some Thunderbolt in action in some of the computers here. So in the very simple message about Thunderbolt is it's the fastest connection to your PC. It's a fairly new technology that's really going to revolutionize, or already is revolutionizing, 4K video and other video creation. So it supports both high-resolution displays and high-performance data devices together at the same time on with a single compact port. So it really sets a bar for the maximum performance, simplicity, and flexibility. And I'll talk about what each of those mean. Some of the key differentiators, key features of Thunderbolt that I'll talk about here is, first of all, Thunderbolt 2 is 20 gigabits per second. So the original Thunderbolt ran 2 channels at 10 gigabits per second, and they were independent channels, one for data, one for display. Those have been combined on Thunderbolt 2 into a single 20 gig link, so you can actually get higher performance if you're just connecting to a storage device or you're just connecting to a high resolution monitor. But all those Thunderbolt 2 PCs and devices, they're all backward compatible to if you have any other Thunderbolt products that from earlier. The protocols that are making the magic behind Thunderbolt are PCI Express for data and DisplayPort for display. If you're familiar with those protocols, then you can understand that kind of the versatility and the performance of those protocols. And we really combine them together, and you're able to kind of mix and match devices and displays on a single daisy chain using those 2 protocols. The other thing about Thunderbolt is the Thunderbolt port is also compatible with DisplayPort. So you can have a native DisplayPort display, not a Thunderbolt display, but just a DisplayPort display. You can plug it into the Thunderbolt port and it will work. It will just behave like a DisplayPort connector. You can also daisy chain up to 6 devices from one computer and even have a monitor at the end of that. And on the cable side, there's electrical cables that go up to 3 meters, and then if you need longer, you can have optical cables that go up to 60 meters today. So a lot of flexibility, and again, I'll talk about how you can use each of these different features that we're talking about. So again, Thunderbolt 2 was announced last year. First product started coming out very late last year, and it's really ramping this year. So we're seeing, really the heavy transition of Thunderbolt 2 and a lot of products that are coming out, including, the HP workstations. So the 2 big things about Thunderbolt 2, as I said, one, it gets to 20 gigabits per second. The second is DisplayPort 1.2. That's the newest version of DisplayPort, and it basically simply takes you from the maximum previously was up to like a QHD monitor, which is like a 3600 by 1440 kind of range, up to you can do full 4K. All the way up to Cinema 4K with up to 60 frames per second. So you get that's really where Thunderbolt 2 brings in full 4K video editing capability. You can now take a raw 4K video file and transfer the file real time into your computer from an external drive, and then also render it and display it on a display, a 4K display, on the same cable. And it's really the only I/O you can actually do both of those at the same time on the same cable. So it really brings home and is really a game changer for 4K video creation. But as I said, it's also backward compatible with all of the Thunderbolt that you may be using today. So this chart here shows the performance levels of Thunderbolt, Thunderbolt 2, compared to some, the previous I/O that are being used. And you can see, first of all, the Thunderbolt 2 goes up to 20 gigs compared to the 10 gigs of for each channel on Thunderbolt. But when you compare it down the line, USB 3.0 is really the other I/O that's in the in the market today, and Thunderbolt 2 is 4 times faster than USB 3, so significantly faster. And then, of course, if you go down the line, a lot of video creation's been done with FireWire over the years. You can see just how slow that is compared to Thunderbolt 2. It's more than 20 times faster. I talked about the display capabilities. This just shows a chart here that gives a little more information. Basically, again, the latest version of DisplayPort runs double the resolution of the, double the speed of the earlier DisplayPort. So now you can run up to 4K video with 60 frames per second. So you can see that on the 20 gig link, the DisplayPort 1.2 goes up to about, the effective bandwidth is 17.25 gigabits per second. And so you can see on this chart here, it's a little off balance, but you can see that the typical 4K, you have the 3840 and the 4096, and those are in the 12 to 13 gigabits per second kind of a range, so well within what Thunderbolt 2 and DisplayPort 1.2 can do. And you can even get up to 60 frames per second and still be within the range. If you start dealing with 36 bits per pixel, and you're getting way out there on the extreme, you're starting to exceed. But really, for what anybody's doing with 4K video today, it's well within Thunderbolt 2 and DisplayPort. By the way, if you have any questions, feel free to bring anything up as I go along. I'm moving along fairly quickly, but just let me know. So daisy chaining, I talked, and again about that, and this is a visual where you can have 6 devices connected together, connected to one computer, and then you can even have a monitor at the end. It could be a Thunderbolt monitor, or it could be a native DisplayPort monitor. As I mentioned, you can plug that directly into a Thunderbolt port, whether it's on the computer or even on a device, right? And you could still be able to make a stream from the computer out to that monitor through the devices. So Thunderbolt networking is a new capability, actually, that we're just bringing out now. And it's essentially emulating Ethernet over standard Thunderbolt, but it's running at Thunderbolt speeds. So you can effectively do 10 gigabit Ethernet over standard Thunderbolt with standard Thunderbolt connectors and standard Thunderbolt cable. And as far as the operating system, like a Windows operating system, sees it as Ethernet, just sees it as an Ethernet network. So everything you might be doing, in Windows or even Mac with an Ethernet network, file sharing, print resources, whatever, you can do, with Thunderbolt, and just at a faster speed. So this capability, Mac to Mac, is available on OS X Mavericks today. And there's a driver that we're putting out soon that will be able to allow PC to PC connection or PC to Mac connection, and Abba will show that later on, the PC to Mac connection. So essentially, one of the key things that Thunderbolt networking does is really kind of brings Thunderbolt into as a really cross-platform connectivity that you can have, Macs and PCs in the same place and be able to work together with them. So I'll talk about some of the usage, we call usage experiences for Thunderbolt. We kind of have 3 buckets that we talk about. The first one is is really storage. It's media transfer. It's sync and go. You know, you're moving content onto a mobile drive and then going, you know, out of the home or office. So you can transfer an HD movie in under 30 seconds, for example, and we'll show some file transfers later that, you know, just show really the power of being able to run at these kind of speeds. You can back up all of your movies, all your content, archive that. You can use external storage as an extension of your internal storage of your computer, running at the same speeds or even faster. So all these things you get with that. The second one is creativity, is really your media creation, your video creation, and being able to take all of the features that we talked about, putting them together in a very simple but powerful video creation workflow, being able to daisy chain the devices, have your storage, your display, your computers, your you know, maybe video capture boxes or media interface boxes all together on a simple daisy chain, and being able to do all that work is what that is. And then the third one, we talk about docking or expansion, and this is being able to have a single cable from a computer, let's say a notebook, to a docking station, and then have all of the ports that you need, whether it's USB or Ethernet or HDMI or all of your display and data ports, on a single box connected to everything on your desktop. And having the performance with the 20 gigs to be able to, you know, use all of your devices simultaneously and be able to have no compromise. So those are kind of the three areas that we talk about. This slide just shows some visual of media creation. In this case, it's a mobile, using some mobile workstation or laptop. And the first one just shows two QHD displays connected, daisy chained together, along with some other devices on the daisy chain. And the one on the right is maybe a 4K display. So you can have a couple of QHD displays running simultaneously, or you could have a 4K display running on the right side. So, and again, you can hang, you know, your other devices off of that daisy chain. This slide just gets in a little bit more detail about kind of the value of Thunderbolt in a variety of different form factors of computers. And so we talk about you know, notebooks here. We talk about small form factor desktops, tower desktop, all-in-one. So all of those different form factors, we have most of them in the HP workstations around us today. And so, you know, again, it's the fastest I/O port. Whatever you're connecting is going to run the fastest, you know, that you'd get out of an external device. External storage equal to or maybe faster than the internal. And, you know, we'll show later even the rated drives in the workstation. You know, you can have faster SSDs or you know, bay RAID systems external on Thunderbolt that are running even faster. Single cable connect to all devices and displays. That's kind of that docking model that I talked about. And then also PCI Express out of the box. What that means is, you know, particularly for a notebook or for an all-in-one, you don't have PCI slots, you don't have expansion. This is, you know, a way that you can take PCI out of the box, and any, you know, if you had a PCI Express card, a lot of manufacturers are actually taking their cards and putting a Thunderbolt interface on it, putting a chassis around it, and then selling it as a, you know, as a Thunderbolt device. So you have no compromise or no shortage of the capabilities that you had when you had you had some PCI slots. So all of those things really bring value to Thunderbolt, you know, in each of those form factors. One thing I wanted to spend a little bit more time on is the tower workstations like these ones over here. You know, some people say when they talk about Thunderbolt, you know, so, you know, maybe they get it on a notebook or an all-in-one where there's not a lot of expansion, not a lot of connectors, but on a tower you've got add-in card slots, you've got, you know, display connectors and things. Why do you need Thunderbolt? So wanted to list a few reasons for that. One is, again, the fastest external storage. How many people use external storage even if you have, you know, a workstation? Everybody, I think, or most people. So, you know, so this gets you the fastest external storage. for backup, for just expanding your capacity, whatever it is. Also the sync and go, taking a mobile drive, and I'll show some of those in a minute here, but being able to take have a fast mobile drive that you can take on the road. Second is the Thunderbolt networking, getting that 10 gig E capability, and that could be in a small work group, or it could be coming back from the field with your mobile workstation, and you want to quickly download all your content from your mobile workstation to your tower workstation. You can just connect it directly. You don't have to transfer it to different drives. So things like that we think are really valuable for the networking. The other is put your workstation under the table or in another room. So this one's interesting. It's taking that docking capability that I talked about, and this, by the way, is a CalDigit dock that has 2 Thunderbolt ports, 3 USB 3 ports, HDMI, Gigabit Ethernet, and audio. And so with a single cable, you can get everything you need on your desktop. So you could now have this sitting on your desktop and have your tower workstation underneath the table. You never have to go underneath to plug in and out your USB devices or whatever. Or even with the long optical cables, we have these. This is a 10-meter optical cable, but they go up to 60 meters. You could actually have your workstation in another room if that's what you want to do. So there's a lot of flexibility that you have by being able to do that, and still have all the connections on your desktop that you need. Also, we talked about the daisy chaining and the simplified workflow. And then the last thing I think is really important also is to share same devices as your PCs and Macs. So even though maybe you could buy an add-in card for the tower workstation, maybe you want a Thunderbolt device so you can use it with your HP ZBook or your Mac or whatever you have, and now you can be able to share the devices across any of your computers. So we think that's valuable. We just had a slide here on the HP workstations, which are all in front of us here. So Terry will get into more detail on those. But basically, Thunderbolt is available either as an option or standard in all of their tower, mobile, and all-in-one workstations. So I want to talk about devices a little bit. I think one of the notions maybe is that there's not a lot of Thunderbolt devices out there. Actually, there's nearly 200 certified devices, meaning they go through the certification program, they go to market. There's on the PC side, a lot of the early devices, since Apple came out with the Macs first with Thunderbolt, a lot of the devices really worked with the Mac. In the last year and a half, they all support PC and Mac. And so over the last year, the number of devices that you can plug into any one of these HPs is tripled. Most of these devices will support that. So I also wanted to show, I showed this docking station here. There's a few other interesting things here that I want to talk about. One is this LaCie little Big Disk 2. This is a Thunderbolt 2 device, and it has 2 PCIe SSDs in it. So it's very fast. In fact, it's the world's fastest portable storage device. It runs up to 1,400 megabytes per second, if that makes sense to you. And it daisy chains Thunderbolt, so it's a really nice product. It's not real cheap, but if you need the performance, it actually can have up to 1 terabyte cards in there, so up to 2 terabytes of SSD in that device. So very nice product. And then some of these other ones we have are bus powered. So they take the 10 watts of Thunderbolt, which is double the power that USB 3 delivers, so you can do more and have higher performance bus powered devices with Thunderbolt. This is a WD Western Digital My Passport Pro that's out now. It has 2 ultra thin hard drives in it that's running off of bus power. It's like the only storage device with 2 spinning hard drives that can be done on bus power. So this is a nice product too. It's got double the performance of 2 hard drives rated, and then also double the capacity. So that goes up to, I think, 4 gigabytes of terabytes of capacity. And then there's a few other ones that are also bus-powered, nice, thank you, nice bus-powered devices like this one here. That's a single SSD there, but it still runs like 500 megabytes per second on the reads. And then this is the smallest one. We like to call it a palm drive. Fits in the palm of your hand, and it plugs in with, the cells with this small little Thunderbolt cable, which I'll plug in here. Maybe it won't plug in here. There we go. Anyway, this has a single mSATA SSD in it that runs like 380 megabytes per second and goes up to 240 gigabytes of capacity. So very nice if you need a little, really portable drive. And then again, I just want to show again this optical cable. There's a pure optical cable that's very thin, very flexible. They like to show how you can pinch it and you can tie knots in it and everything, and it will still work. So it's a very nice if you need the length for that. The other thing I wanted to point out is as much as there's high performance devices on Thunderbolt for the professional work, everything below the blue line there is under $299. So there's a lot of, and some of the products, or a couple of products that are going around, everything below there is under $299. So there's a lot of products also at at mainstream kind of price points that you can get. This I wanted to just put a special highlight on. It's a LG display that just came out. It's a Thunderbolt 2 display with docking as well. So it has 2 Thunderbolt 2 ports. You can daisy chain Thunderbolt on it. And then also has a few USB ports. You can plug in your keyboard and mouse and such. The interesting thing about the one on the left here is it's a 34-inch ultra-wide monitor. So it's almost like 2 monitors in one. You can have really 2 applications going, or an app and a video going at the same time. Really nice for video creation. So that came out recently a few months ago, and then this 27-inch version is coming out shortly with Thunderbolt 2 as well. And so cables, again, I mentioned, the electrical cables go up to 3 meters. And then optical cables can go up to 60 meters if you need, that kind of length. There's a lot of cables in the market. I'm sure there's some sold here at B&H from a lot of different vendors you can see there. So, all right. So I'll just summarize by saying, Thunderbolt 2 runs at 20 gigabits per second. It really does enable a 4K video workflow. Being able to do the file transfer and display real-time simultaneously on the same connector. Thunderbolt networking is a new capability that's just coming out. That's going to be, I think, add some new flexibility in being able to connect two or more computers together, but running at 10 gig speeds. The device ecosystem, continues to expand. There's a lot of development going on this year on Thunderbolt 2 products. So we're seeing a continual increase in the number of products that are coming out over the course of this year. So. All right, any questions before I hand it back to Terry?
So, thank you, Jason. So I'm going to continue and kind of segue here with the HP line, just to give you an idea again of what we've got. What the role Thunderbolt is playing in it. So here's a picture, the beauty shot of our workstation line. It looks like a lot of different machines, and it is. It's really 2 big families together. We have our entry-level workstations, which is the HP Z230 system. This is the world's smallest. This is our lowest cost, high-performance workstation. So it's got a lot of the big features you'd expect on a workstation, 3-year global warranty. We've got professional graphics, error checking and correcting memory. We've got some higher level quality SSDs and storage devices. And really a very highly engineered product, and it's in a very compact case. So if this kind of form factor works, it's a phenomenal, again, entry-level workstation. Low-profile graphics cards, though. If you want a more powerful graphics card to do something like Adobe After Effects, some GPU acceleration of your applications, you'd probably want to look at the bigger chassis, which lets you put a full-size graphics card in it. But again, we have the same entry-level quad-core processors from Intel. We have the Intel E3 series Xeon, up to 4 cores maximum. And then the third version, if you will, of these entry-level Z230s is called the Z1. The one because it's an all-in-one, and it's the world's first all-in-one workstation. And the great thing about this is, again, it's an all-in-one. So while it looks like it's a 27-inch display, it actually is a workstation. And you can pop the lid here and see inside that you've got a complete workstation there. We have Quadro graphics, so that's an NVIDIA Quadro K40-100 card, up to 32 gigabytes of memory, quad-core graphics processor, ECC memory, as we mentioned, up to dual SSDs plus a third mSATA SSD. Okay, you've got some Beats audio, you've got a digital audio out, really an incredibly complete system. There's a camera, directional camera up here, so it's a phenomenal system. It also has a VESA mount, so you could actually hang it on the wall or any other alternative mounting scheme. And of course, it has Thunderbolt, and in fact, this one has dual Thunderbolt ports. So we have two new Thunderbolt 2 ports for 2 times 20 gigabits per second. So another version, if you will, of our entry-level workstation. This one is blended, if you will, with a 27-inch professional display. That's a 2560 by 1440 display. There's a touchscreen version available, and there's also a matte finish version available if you want the non-glare for typically the one that the artists want to use. So that kind of is our entry-level workstation line, and again, Thunderbolt's available on all of them. And then you kind of step up to our higher-end line here. We have the 420, the Z420, the 620, and the 820. And this really gets you kind of into an entry-level high-end workstation. We start off with 4 cores, but you also can go to an 8-core processor and up to a 12-core processor in this system, 64 gigabytes of memory, lots of storage space, classic tower architecture. So if you've been, if you love your workflow, but you wish you could get a tower back in the, like you had back in the old days, perhaps, here's where you're going to start to get kind of that classic high-end horsepower at an entry-level price for a high-end, if you will. And then we go to our Z620, which is very similar, except it has an all-touch toolless design, and this is how you add a second processor to it. So you can actually add a second Intel Xeon 12-core processor. So now you've got 24 cores, up to 192 gigabytes of memory, lots of storage. And here we're introducing our, cable-less way to add storage devices. You can add a 4 terabyte drive here, for example. Soon 6 terabyte drives. Lots of slots. We do have a big power supply that supports up to the Quadro K6000 card from NVIDIA for acceleration. So really you get into a very high horsepower system here, also with Thunderbolt, of course. And then, of course, our Z820, which is our top-of-the-line machine, completely toolless. And the best thing, the funnest thing to show off here is, for example, how you change the power supply if you need to. It's an 1100 watt power supply. No tools, no cables, very slick. The entire machine is really built to be maintained like this, and huge capacity, up to 512 gigabytes or half a terabyte of RAM, 24 cores, lots of room for up to 3, in some cases 3 Quadro K6000 cards, lots of drive space. There's lots of other bays up here. So this is really the top-of-the-line system that is a very popular system at a lot of the major studios in the world. It's the standard at most of the animation studios on the planet. So it's a very popular box, and also available with Thunderbolt. And lastly, we also have our notebooks, which are here, and these are our mobile workstations. So we don't call them laptops, they're actually mobile workstations. This one is our 15-inch, for example, up to 32 gigs of RAM, quad-core Intel processors. We have our Dream Color color correct, calibratable color correct display where you can adjust the color space for the work you're doing. Rec 709 for HD TV, for example. If you're a photographer, you might like to push the button and shift to Adobe RGB color space for perfectly accurate color so that you can print what you're actually editing. Up to 3 bays, drive bays on the bottom, and user accessibility, which is a feature a lot of folks that are in production like, so they can swap out storage devices manually without having to go to a shop to have the hood pulled off. So here's, for example, is a thumb drive, a thumb lever here to actually change your SSD. There's room for more memory here. You can change your battery. So everything's user accessible. So it's a very flexible box. It's also ruggedized. It passes the military 810G spec for shock. And so it's really built to be an in-the-field, high-performance workstation. And of course, it also has Thunderbolt among every other port, including along with every other port you've ever heard of, USB 3. We even have the old, Express card slot, And any of the slots that you'd probably want to ever have used or will want to use are here, including Thunderbolt now, Thunderbolt 2. Okay, so the workstations and the mobile workstations, again, are really set up to work great. So just a quick kind of picture here of kind of how we see this being used. It's great if you've got an environment with Macintoshes or any other systems. You want to share all these great peripherals that Jason just talked about. But the other big use case that we're actually most excited about is the other one that Jason talked about, which was, if I can get this to go backwards. I might have skipped that slide. Here it is. The peer-to-peer networking. So the 10 gigabit Ethernet over Thunderbolt we think is going to be a great workflow enhancer. So if you've got your MacBook Pro, you've come in from the field, you've got a great shot, you've done some Final Cut Pro work on it, and you've got a kind of rough cut the way you like it, you can come back to your office where instead of having 4 cores, you have 24 cores, and instead of having maybe 8 gigs of memory, you have up to, let's say, 256 gigabytes of memory. Instead of having no real accelerated graphics, you could have a Quadro K6000 processor from NVIDIA. And now a job like a color correction job or a render that might say it's going to take 2 hours might take 10 minutes over here. So by being able to connect these things directly together and have jobs stored on the Z820 as if they were being stored on an external storage device, you've got a really interesting way to blend these two architectures. You're working on your Mac, but you're storing here, and then when you need to shift gears and run something like DaVinci Resolve or something like that, you can run it here much faster than you would be able to run it on the Mac notebook or other notebooks as well, including HP's. So it's a really interesting way to kind of dock a high horsepower system and high performance storage here. The one we have today, you'll see, Abba will show you, we actually have a Turbo Z drive. This is a new drive introduced by HP, which is a high performance PCI storage card, up to about 2 gigabytes per second. We've got a RAID 5 volume, so in these drives we have 4 large drives rated together for RAID 5 for data protected storage. And then we even have what's called a Fusion I/O card, if you've heard of those. Those are also very high performance flash memory cards. So we have all 3 of those in this system, and Abba will show you that he can actually access them and run off of them from the MacBook Pro. So interesting workflow enhancement that we think is going to be very popular. And the one last thing I want to talk about real quick, 2 things actually, is a little more spec on these workstations, Dream Color displays, NVIDIA graphics, Thunderbolt. So really these things have just a massive amount of horsepower on our notebooks. And if you're looking for a way to get more horsepower in the field rather than waiting until you can get back and dock, this is a good way to do it. And there's one other thing here, if I can find it. I think I skipped it. Here we go. We don't have it here today, but we even have a 17-inch notebook with 4 SSDs available, and we support RAID 5 on it. So if you ever have an insurance issue where you need insurance, and the insurance company insists that you have RAID 5 protection on every piece of data that you're creating, you can actually do RAID 5 on a notebook, which is unprecedented. The other thing about it is you can put a K5100 or K5000 graphics card in it, the most powerful graphics card, the second most powerful graphics card that NVIDIA makes in the mobile version, with 8 gigabytes of memory just on the graphics card. So huge amount of horsepower, and you can pair that with our color correct display, the Dream Color, and you can connect out to the rest of the world with Thunderbolt. So really some great flexibility, some great horsepower in the machine, and great ability to share with other devices as well. And lastly, I want to point out we're using our Dream Color displays here. These were engineered with most of the major studios, co-developed by HP with some major studio, the color scientists. These are, again, color-accurate displays. We have them on our notebooks. We have a brand new one we just introduced here at NAB a month or so ago. This is the 27-inch, lower price, adjustable color space. It's got some phenomenal features. So if you do color work, color-accurate work, this is an incredible display to take a look at. And so you can see that it's also 4K compatible. So it's not a 4K display. It's a 2660 by 1440. However, it accepts and scales properly a 4K signal and lets you look at your work, and it's in a window you can scale pixel per pixel and still see the other image, the full image scaled in another window. So it's got some very interesting 4K workflow features that let you use it as a 4K display, even though it isn't technically a 4K display. And you save a lot of money too, because it's actually a very low cost display. So that's just a quick blast what we have today. Just wanted to emphasize that, again, HP is obviously committed to Thunderbolt, and we think it's a great way to, again, mix your environment productively without having to worry about how can I plug this into my Mac or into my HP. I think this is going to make it work a lot more smoothly as we go forward. So thank you for that, and with that I will introduce Abba Shapiro, who is a longtime video professional, started at CNN in 1982. I have that memorized now. And is also a Adobe Master Trainer. So Abba's going to show a few things that he works on and how he uses Thunderbolt among other technologies.
Okay, well this is part 3 of our presentation. Once again, my name's Abba Shapiro. I kind of come to you as a person who actually uses this stuff. I've been in the industry for over 30 years. You know, I've worked on analog systems. I've worked on the early Avid systems, Final Cut Pro, and the Mac. And actually, I come from a very long Mac experience. So for those of you who are looking to switch, you know, I've walked in those shoes, and now I'm working with Premiere, with the HP systems, and still have one on a MacBook. And so I'm kind of here to bring you the real world benefits. Now, just to get a sense of where everybody's coming from, you know, I tend to do more interactive presentations. I want to hear questions, and you know, I want to make sure you get the information you want. Of the folks here, how many people are coming from, our editors are using this as an editing tool, like Premiere or Final Cut, or, okay. And did you come from Final Cut, or did you come from Premiere, or what applications? Final Cut, Final Cut 7, and Final Cut 10. So you're using 7 and 10, and you're looking at anybody using Premiere at all yet? Okay, so I'll talk some of those benefits. Anybody shooting, period, not even 4K, just shooting stuff. Okay. And then how many people are a little bit, so we have, for the people who are watching this, we have a few hands going up. And how many people here are a little bit confused by some of this techno speak and the 4K and data rates and whatnot? I'll say it. I think it's very confusing. I do want to point out that if you have a question, don't hesitate, because a lot of times, you know, you'll ask a question and over half the room benefits from the answer. You know, and there's the emperor's new clothes. Don't be afraid to ask, you know, if the emperor is naked. I promise I won't be. But I will want to make sure that if I use jargon and you have a question, or it doesn't make sense, or we're throwing megabits and megabytes around, that it really makes sense, so you can get a practical understanding. So what I want to do is I want to kind of break my session down into about 3 parts. I want to talk a little bit about what this 4K thing is, why you should be interested, and some of the challenges of it, and compare it to some of the other resolutions for broadcast and recording. I want to talk a little bit about my experience in switching over to the HP machines, and what I think is really cool about it, some of which, you know, you got to see some cool stuff, but I got to go firsthand and say, oh, I want to change something, how easy or how hard it is. And then we're going to take a look at the ecosystem here and 4K workflows, and having Thunderbolt talk between the Mac and the HP, and talk between some of these devices, and how much more efficient it is when dealing with these very, very large files. And that's the first thing I want to talk about, is what really is 4K. It's a term that's bandied around, and in a sense, it's super or ultra high definition. You might see ultra HD TV. It's another name for this 4K. They wanted to come out with a very high resolution format, just like HD when they were going to come out with one flavor, HD, multiple flavors. And I do have a slide to show. Let me go ahead and hide this. And I want to point out, it's kind of hard to see, but giant resolution with a little slide. And I could zoom in on this, but I'm not going to mess things up. So the smaller area is traditional standard definition television, 720 by 480. And then we have these new high def formats, and things you'll normally hear are 720p or 1080p. That's 1920 by 1080. These are your high definition formats. So it's a little bit bigger, more pixels, 1280 by 720. The ultimate of high definition we have is 1920 by 1080. If that was a still camera, that'd only be 2 megapixels. Okay, so you know, you buy these cameras now, these still cameras, and you're talking 15, 20, 25 megapixels. High definition television really isn't that high definition compared to some still images, but when you look at it and you're looking at it at 30 frames a second, it looks pretty nice. But they wanted something better, and so Ultra HD is 3840 by 2160 is one flavor of it. They also have a little bit of a wider one, 4096. One is for television, 16 by 9. The movie people had to be different. They're a little bit more widescreen. But the bottom line is, you can see it's a lot more pixels that we're pushing, a lot more data. And that becomes very challenging. So I kind of wanted to give you a little perspective. There's a little bit of irony that if this is Ultra HD, that in a few years we'll have the super ultra high HD that will be a 1,000,000,001 pixels. But let's hope we don't have that for now. And let me go ahead and switch us back to Premiere. So getting an understanding of how large this is, and you have some challenges when you're dealing with 4K because you have big files and you need pretty big bandwidth so to shoot that data through. Some people will term it as a big pipe. And that's where Thunderbolt comes in, and that's where the demands on these systems increase. Now, stepping back a little bit, why is 4K important to you? Is it just something magical that is going to go the way of 3D and the dinosaur? And it isn't. I had the opportunity to walk around the store earlier, and just to see what was available for the average consumer. And even in the consumer cameras over just right outside the room, they have a 4K little camcorder. It's a couple $1,000s, which isn't bad for what you're getting. It's a 1-inch sensor, it shoots 4K, and the average person can buy that. The GoPro will shoot 4K. Now, right now it's only 12 frames a second, but I'm sure the next iteration is probably going to be full 24 or 34 frames. So people are shooting 4K. They're shooting this ultra high definition. If you go down to some of the pro video cameras, there's a lot more. There's the Panasonic G4, I think, and then you have Blackmagic, and you have the Red cameras and Arri cameras. So content is being captured both on the professional side as well as on the prosumer and on the consumer side. And I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing your phones being able to shoot 4K. Because right now it's going to shoot very easily 1920 by 1080 and even 120 frames a second. So it can handle that data rate. So people are going to start recording this stuff, and that way it's going to become more popular. 3D, you had to put glasses on, it was very complex. Here it's simple. You look at a prettier picture, everybody's happy. So in addition to having a larger frame with more detail, it also takes the color to the next level where you have a lot larger of color space. So in fact, I'm going to show you on one of the slides we did earlier. And I will jump back here. There's about 3 slides that I want to revisit that have really valuable information that I can translate to the layperson. This is one of them, and that is, if you start looking at the size of these images, we have 1920 by 1080 in our color space, but as you get into the really high definition ones, you have deeper color palettes, and you have a more refined color palette. You hear terms like 8-bit, 10-bit, 12-bit, 30-bit. What that means when you're dealing with color is how fine the color is. So if you have like from 0 to 1 and you divide it into 256 slices, you'll see that there might be some gradation there. You might see some banding. And now that's 8-bit. 10-bit is 1024 because everything is 2 to the 8th or 2 to the 10th. I won't make you do the math. You don't have to do the math. But that's even more fine. So you have more natural color flow. So we're dealing with deeper color and cleaner gradients, better looking picture. But this all creates very large files, especially compared to some of the formats that you might be traditionally using, everything from DV to H.264, which are very highly compressed. So I just want to give that in a little bit of perspective. In addition to this challenge of 4K, what are people going to be watching it? I mean, does anybody have 4K TVs? Yeah, they sell them, but are people broadcasting? And you have to take a look what's happening in the market. And it's very interesting. The highest resolution most television stations are broadcasting are 1080, that 1920 by 1080 signal, not even full progressive. It's interlaced because it has to be broadcast. But the whole scene's changing. If you take a look at YouTube, YouTube has 4K. You can download and watch 4K videos. And Netflix is working towards that. As a matter of fact, Netflix will allow you to do higher resolution than broadcast. They'll do 1080 progressive versus 1080 interlaced. So people are starting to see things and have the potential to watch things in 4K. So there's not that barrier of entry with 3D or with, oh, I need to buy a new television and it's going to be 4K. They're just all becoming standard. As a matter of fact, the price of these monitors, $600 for the Ultra HD, but you can also start seeing the, not the Ultra HD, but the Dream Color. But you'll start seeing a lot more 4K or quasi 4K systems that are coming out. So it's happening. Now, another thing, some of you were in production, a lot of times we shoot on a higher resolution like a 4K, and then you can put it inside of a 1920 by 1080, project. So let's say I did a shot of this room, static, at 4K. I could actually zoom in or pan without losing resolution if I'm putting it into just a high definition, program, which is really kind of cool. A lot of times we do that. We shoot static and we do all the moves after the fact. So it gives you a lot of flexibility, but you still need the bandwidth to be able to do it. So that's kind of a whirlwind overview of 4K. So there are 3 elements that really push how well a piece of hardware can handle this kind of media. And I'm going to use Premiere as the example for how it leverages the hardware. So if we look at the machines, 64-bit is a must, but everything you're going to find is going to be a 64-bit operating system with 64-bit applications. But what that allows you to do is it allows you to access as much RAM as you can throw at it. So with some of the older 32-bit systems, you were limited to 3.5 gigabytes of RAM no matter how much you had in it. So the more RAM, the better. Okay? And you can always get by with less, but it's going to take longer to sometimes render or to calculate stuff that you throw at the CPU, the central processing unit. Coming to the CPU, you can have multiple cores. There's a couple things that affect the value of your processor. The speed of the processor is just only one part because it's kind of a numbers game. But in addition to the speed, you can have multiple cores. And then you can have multiple processors on the cores. So you hear quad core and dual core and octa core. So the more cores you have, the more it can distribute the processing. Then there's another thing, and I know this is getting very techno-geeky, but then you hear all these different chips, the i7 chip and whatnot. And some of those chips have this capability to do something called multi-threading. And multi-threading basically sometimes says that it can look at a single core, but it's so efficient, it works as if it's 2 cores, depending on the application. After Effects works one way, Premiere works another way. So how powerful your CPU and number of cores will affect it. Okay. The third element, so we've done CPUs, we've done RAM and cores, they're kind of combined with the RAM, the cores and CPU, is your graphics card. And we've heard mention of that in earlier parts of the presentation. A lot of the heavy lifting that used to be done in the central processing unit is now being offloaded to the graphics card. We didn't do that in earlier programs, but now they kind of looked at the gaming systems. This was like 8-10 years ago, and they said, they can do all these pixels per second for these video games. Let's use that same strategy so that we don't have to render. So a video card has a certain speed, and it has something called VRAM, video RAM. The more video RAM you have, and the more powerful the processor on that video card, the more of that work can be offloaded. So it used to be they were like in the early laptops like 64 and 128. Now pretty much you're going to get 512 to a gigabyte. It's a gigabyte is the flavor for the video cards, correct? I get my numbers sometimes a little confused. So all these, the minimum is a gig. You can get like a 2 gig video card in the laptops. And if you get the 17, you can even push it, as you saw, up to 6 gigabytes of video RAM. And then on the towers, you can get up to 12, and then you can put multiple cards in. So you can do really complex stuff if you're throwing at it. Now, that's the landscape. Doesn't necessarily answer the question now. But it gives you an idea of how you need to juggle this depending on the type of work you're doing and the formats. So I can handle, oh, I'm sorry. And then the last, this is important. The speed of your drives, and if you have external drives, the speed of your pipe, which is what we're talking about with Thunderbolt 2. Because these files are huge. And if you need to push, a high definition video stream, off a drive, it has to be able to spin fast enough. So we RAID drive sometimes, or we use SSDs. And in other cases, we have an external, and this can be the fastest drive series in the world, but if you can't get from here to there quickly enough, you're going to drop frames. So you need to have a lot of bandwidth for your connections. There are some examples of some of the clips that will be working, and I'm going to give you the basic example. DV video, okay? 3.5 megabits per second. Very small by comparison to some of these video files, which can be, the one I have is 1.6 gigabytes. Huge. So, processor, any of these machines, any of the standard machines can pretty much handle processing it. I would recommend a video card. If you're going to put a video card in, I like nothing smaller than a 2 gigabyte VRAM card, which is I have in my laptop. The desktop, I really like to go with 4. It would be awesome if I had was doing big enough work that I could afford, the bigger ones, the 6 and the 12s. 2 and 4, I think, is the sweet spot. RAM varies depending on what you're going to use. After Effects likes to have 3 to 4 gigabytes of RAM for every core. So if you have a 12-core machine, 36 to 48 gigabytes of RAM. If you have less, it can still work, but it's not using its full potential. Premiere may not need that. They can do multi-threading, and it looks at it differently. Actual cores is the term. So how do I have my system configured? 32 gigabytes of RAM is my base system. 2 gigabyte video card. Okay. Multi-core machine, and it varies whether I'm on a laptop or a desktop, but middle to top of the line. It doesn't have to be crazy, 512. It's great if you can afford it, but I'm realistic. And then when it comes to drives, I'm a big fan of a couple of solutions. SSDs are really nice, as well as these flash drives that we were talking about that are in here. But I'm also a fan of rated standard spinning drives. And in our tower, we have 4 of them. So it's a 4 drives, and I can get incredible throughput because it's looking at them all as if they're one giant single drive. It's a RAID, okay? It's a redundant drive. And here I have 8. Now, if I have external solutions, that's where Thunderbolt comes in, because these are really fast, but I need a pipe that can move that much data that quickly. And if you do really high resolution, uncompressed 4K with lots of streams of video, which means I'm doing picture-in-picture, I'm doing quad splits, split screens, each of those streams is going to use up data. So that's where you need bigger pipes or dual ports. So generally, Thunderbolt 2 is good for most everybody's standard needs if you're using external. But yes, no matter what, like a fish tank, we fill the fish tank. Bigger fish tank, we get bigger fish. Technology tends to grow as we need it. So you say, oh, we have all this great stuff, and then people demand, okay, now we have Ultra HD, now we need Super Ultra HD, we need 8K. So that's an idea. I think it was a little more detailed than it could have been, but at least it kind of gives you the perspective of where to invest your money when designing these machines, customizing it for you. Especially if you come from, how many people here are primarily were Mac people, or Mac users? And how many people are Windows people? Okay, so we have a lot of former Mac people, or current Mac people, and that's where I was. I was a Mac person for years, and I was always stuck in this world of USB 2 and FireWire, which is really, really slow, and we thought FireWire was fast. We were sold that it was really fast. But as you can see, it's relatively slow, and this is really the bottleneck of using external drives. And so as we go up to eSATA, which was faster, and USB 3, which Macs didn't even have until about a year ago, or a year and a half ago, we were really stuck. You get to Thunderbolt, we're talking twice as fast as USB 3. Most people are still using USB 2 devices or FireWire devices. I mean, when you get to FireWire compared to this, we're almost 25 times faster. I'm going to show you an example. How many people have copied big files? Okay, so let's say I gave you a 50 gigabyte file, and I said you need to copy from one drive to another, 50 gigs. How long do you think that usually would take you?
Half an hour, 12 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
15, 20 minutes using USB, using FireWire,
yeah.
800. Might be a little longer, but that, yeah. So usually, yeah, you're right. It's sometimes a half hour, sometimes an hour, depending. If USB 2, you just come back the next morning. This is how fast you can copy with Thunderbolt across. Actually, well, this will be a little bit of a cheat here. I'm kind of doing a double transition while answering the questions. I actually have this MacBook hooked directly to the HP. Plug and play. You know, the drivers are available. I plug in the Thunderbolt into the Mac. I plug the Thunderbolt into the HP and basically share the drives on the HP. I just go in and say, OK, share these drives on the Mac. And I'll zoom in so you can see it. And I apologize to those people watching. It's going to be on the center screen, but I don't have it on the big screen. And if I go here, and I zoom in, and this is just basically in the Finder, you'll see under shared drives, it says T. Brown. That's T. Brown, that computer. And if I click on this, and I'm going to just kind of cheat and scroll over here a little bit. It may take a second to connect. Let it wake up a little bit. It fell asleep. I will see the 3 internal drives. And I can just either edit directly off of those drives. So maybe somebody comes in, producer comes in and says, I want to use my machine. It's set up perfectly for me. All the media's on the HP. You can literally plug it in. They can edit. If they save it to that, you know, the project file there, it's all, you just go to the HP, open it up, and you can do your finishing. So a producer can come in and do a pre-cut. So that's really very cool. I may have to turn on sharing on this. I might have you troubleshoot that for a second. Another workflow is, let's say the producer has been editing on their MacBook, and they have all the media there, and they want to be able to give it to me, to copy it off. So I could, again, plug it in, literally HP to the MacBook, and copy it over. And this is where it gets really cool, where it gets really fast. So it just populated. It took a second, as I said. My computer fell asleep. But I have 3 drives, F, R, and Z. These are really well labeled by the guy who set it up. The R in the middle is your rated drives, the 4 SCSI drives, the SATA drives that are there. Z is that turbo drive, which is really fast. And then F is the Fusion drive. So I have 3 sets of RAIDs here. And if I wanted to, I could literally, I'm looking at the HP. I can open up any clip or any folder. I can play it directly off here. I could play it in Premiere, which I think I had running before. So I have Premiere running, and I could play it. It'll take a second to populate. But what I really want to show you is how quickly you can copy stuff. Of course, I can play a 4K clip. So I'm playing 4K off there through FireWire, not through FireWire, it would be embarrassing. It would be through Thunderbolt. FireWire, this thing would just choke to death. And now if I wanted to copy something, I could simply go over here, and I can go both ways. So I could drag this file, and this file is 42 gigs. Do a quick drag. Says there's already one there. I'll replace it. Must have done this before. And then if I look at how long this takes, 40 gigs, it's guessing it's about 3 minutes. I think it's a little faster if I go the other way. Now, what's interesting is this is a Mac formatted internal drive. And it works, and all I have to do is have a piece of software on my machine that says, oh, you can recognize a Mac drive. A couple of them, there's Mac Drive, there's HFS Plus by Paragon, and it's just plug and play. And conversely, I can get a plug-in for the Mac so it can see every format of Windows drives. So I do that, and it takes all those barriers away. And that's what's really cool. You don't have to say, oh, I'm a Mac, you're a PC, it's a problem, you brought in a drive. It's just really, really quick. And then I can also copy back. So I think it's the write of that drive is a little bit slow on the Mac, but still it's pretty quick. So in our conversation, the copy finished in about 3 minutes. And you know, that's huge to me, because a lot of times I'll have 200-300 gigabytes of media for a show, and it's like, oh, I've got to dump it over. And you're thinking, oh, that's going to just take forever. But with this technology, I could probably copy that in less than a half hour. As a matter of fact, I've copied it in about 20 minutes, depending on the speed of the drives. And that means I will do that. And that's the trick, is that a lot of times when we're in the field and we have stuff recorded onto cards or onto SSDs, it's like, oh, I have to back it up. It's going to take an hour and a half. It's going to take 2 hours. And you don't do it, and that's putting you at risk. You know, something happens to the drive, it gets lost, you re-record over it, so it's a challenge. So in the field, I found that that's very, very useful. Also, just even copying things off of camera cards. An Adamus records to an SSD. It's a way you can record directly out of like a DSLR at full resolution, but you still need to copy stuff. So moving data is becoming the biggest challenge now, especially when we have big files and we're recording big files. So that's something huge to keep in mind. And the other challenge was, back in the old days, it was like, okay, Apple did USB 2 and FireWire, and the PC worlds did USB 2 and then USB 3, but there was never this consensus. And occasionally, you know, HP actually was great. They had FireWire on their machines, but as a general industry, it wasn't embraced, so it was like either or. The beautiful thing about Thunderbolt is it's accepted across both those platforms, so you're not stuck. And you literally can plug and play. And that's what I do. My workflow is, I'm a big fan. I love this at my desk. I'm not going to carry it into the field. I'm not shooting a $100 million production where I have somebody to carry it for me. I'm a sucker for these pocket drives. As a matter of fact, one of the solutions I use is, and I had it, oh no, I put it here. Is just even a Thunderbolt dock. This is one dock. There's a couple other that we saw on the slide. B&H sells some nice little docks you can slide in 3.5 drives. And then I use, these are solid state. And I get ridiculously fast performance, and it's very cost effective, and I can swap things out. So it's really kind of nice. While I'm talking about in the field, and then I'm going to actually hop on the system and show you some performance. Terry got to show you a little bit about how flexible these machines are for upgrading. And that was one of the huge things for me when I switched over to an HP is, you know, I loved my Mac. You know, I was Mac 30 years. I still use Macs, you know, and I have clients who do, but it never offered me the flexibility anymore of being able to crack the case and upgrade it. Couldn't put a bigger hard drive in. I was committed to what I bought, couldn't put more RAM in, couldn't change out anything. And even on the bigger machines, like the iMacs, it wasn't conducive to change. So when I got this, you know, first I was shocked that I could actually open it up. And so Terry showed you a couple of these things. Battery, nice thing you can pop out. You can get a high yield battery. But in addition to that, I got the machine and I was happy with it for about a week. And then I realized I wanted to upgrade after a week. That's, you know, that's me. Very easy to pop in the other RAM. Took it from 16 to 32. Less than 5 minutes. Not even 5 minutes. Probably took me 5 minutes to, you know, watch the YouTube video on how to put the RAM in, and then the RAM was like probably a minute. The other thing I found was really cool, and you saw this, was how easy it is to pull out the internal drive. One of the things I learned as a Macintosh user is Windows doesn't like to let you boot up from an external drive. It needs to be internal. You can partition it or whatnot, but if you have a couple of drives you want to switch out between, say, you know, Windows 7 and Windows 8, or maybe, you know, it's configured for a client, maybe it has Premiere software, and then you have one that you just want to have Avid software on, who knows. I may want to swap out the drive, and literally I just got a sled from HP, put it in another drive. I switched from a spinning drive, 7,200 RPM, to an SSD. But I can still swap this out. It's just 3 screws, which I can't lose because they don't come out. They just loosen. Pull that tab, slide that right in, and that was pretty easy. And then just formatted it. So I thought that was pretty cool because if I have, let's say, I always have a backup drive. If I have something happen to my drive in the field, my computer's not dead, I can get it working again in just a couple minutes. So that kind of security is great. And the other thing, and we didn't talk about this, is, you know, in addition to that drive, there's also an mSATA, a little 32 gigabyte cache that I can set up as a, for After Effects, for my paging my files. Or if I wanted to, if I had a spinning drive, I could make it a hybrid so it feels faster. And then finally, still comes with a DVD. And you're saying, I've learned that I don't need a DVD. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. A lot of times you don't, but what I found that was really cool, and again, this kind of blew me away, is one screw, and I can remove this whole bay, and I can get another bay that holds a 2.5-inch SATA drive. Slap it right in. Now I have either, I can RAID that, or I have a nice little backup media drive. And it's very easy. And then if I needed the DVD, I could either use an external or pop it back in. It literally is one screw. The whole cage slides out. It's that quick. So I just found that to be really, really cool in its flexibility. And the fact that I could put in a fairly robust video card, the 2100M, a nice 2 gigabyte video card. If I really needed the power, and I used to have a 17 that had a 4 gigabyte video card, and I think you can do 6 now. Love the 17. My back said, a little bit heavy. It's a workstation. But if you needed that power in the field, it's awesome. So I did want to point out, real big fan of the flexibility on that. Very techno-geeky stuff, and it's tough for us. I mean, this is the whole challenge of this, is that there's a lot of great technology. It can be confusing. I like the fact that it's becoming more and more turnkey. I like the fact that I can plug in the Thunderbolt cable and they can just talk to each other. I can copy things. I like the fact that I can order a configuration that I know is going to kind of work on a preset, and that I don't have to worry about, oh, I have to manage my RAM anymore. I have to go into the settings of Premiere and say, OK, allocate this. The software is working smarter. The hardware is working smarter. The OS is a lot friendlier. There's a feature that I really like, and we're going to migrate over to me actually talking about Premiere and my experiences, because one of my biggest challenges in going over to the HP was I love the technical specs. I mean, I could build such a super fast machine, but it still ran on an operating system that I wasn't that familiar with, which was Windows. So there's there's a fear there, and I think it's a natural fear that people who have worked a lot on Macs have, that they're dealing with Windows. And the thing is, Windows has improved, and it is becoming more user-friendly, more Mac-like for the people who say, I need something more Mac-like, drag and drop. But there still is a little fear where things are stored. I basically said, I'm going to learn this, and spent 2 days just saying, I'm not going to go back to the Mac. I'm going to learn how to do it on this machine. And you start getting into, oh, this is becoming more fluid, more natural. So I do recommend that you just take a couple of days. There's a lot of great videos that you can link through directly from the OS. As a matter of fact, I'm going to kind of jump into a couple things that I learned. And there's 2 areas. First of all, let's see if I can find this quickly without actually. So one thing is really cool that the HP does is that, and this is again why I embraced it. It was like I had a choice. What PCs do I want to use? They have additional software on top of the OS when you install it or when they send it to you that kind of make it a little more user-friendly. So they have additional programs that kind of smooth out the bumps. They have something that I really like called the Performance Advisor, which actually provides me a very Mac-like interface. I want to say yes, I think. There we go. We're not hooked to the internet, so it just told me that it can't go and compare this. But I can analyze my system, and I can very easily see what's in it. That's the other thing. It's the mystery of what's in the system and what's my software. It's doing all the analyzing now, and I have all these drives. And I can also check out your performance, and if something's like getting a hit, you can see where to fix it. So it's like, oh, my video card's really slow, or the data rate on my hard drive is really slow. So I can look at my computer in a visual representation where things are wired to, what's on there, and how it works. So that's great. I can look at it in a traditional geeky sense where I'm looking at everything as a list. So if people say, OK, what video card do you have and what not, or RAM? And going back to the RAM, I can actually see what slots have what in it and what's empty. OK, put out a report if I need to. But let me go back here. The other things that I like about this. Easily see what software is on it. That's the question. It's like, I don't even know what my software is. So we can go and see how it's combined. And then it can do a performance analysis And that's actually pretty cool. We got some numbers up here, these 7, 7.8, 7.9. In Windows, if you're running Windows 7, you top out at 7.9 is like the holy grail. Okay? Windows 8, they kind of raise the bar because they kind of deal with memory different ways. So I can look here, and my base score is 7.8, which means my lowest, my processor subscore was the lowest one. So that's 7.8 on a scale of 7.9. So it's pretty good. But if I saw this as another number, I might see, oh, my graphics is low, or I could, you know, have faster hard drives. As a matter of fact, when I had the spinning hard drive, that dropped me down to like 5.1. And then I put the SSD in, and it jumped right back up to 7.9. So little friendly things like that. And there's one other friendly feature, which is, and I'm hoping it's on here, it's the HP Assistant. And not the performance, there's a, it's the HP Assistant. This is an HP machine, so they don't need assistance, okay? They know how to do this. Is the engineer's machine, but it's the HP Assistant. And literally, it walks me through like how to use this computer, like, you know, where the ports are, the manual. If I need to know how Windows works, it links me to Microsoft, and I can see how to use Windows. A lot of people don't take advantage of that, and I found that it's a good way to migrate into using a Windows machine. And really, after a couple of days, it didn't feel so scary. And I liked the fact that it was very robust. I clicked, and it worked. So that was one of the big things. Let's go ahead and open up Premiere and show you a couple other workflows. So this machine likes to go to sleep. So you saw earlier, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I can go ahead and literally edit off of here. So let's pretty much a given. You see that, plug and play. I can either use the media on here, I can use the media on there, I can move media across really fast. And the beautiful thing is, it's just a Thunderbolt cable. And all I have to do is hit share. So there's a beauty in that simplicity, and there's a lot of workflows. And if you are coming from, I know a couple people said they were working in Final Cut 10, there's a really cool program. Of course, Final Cut 10 does not run on an HP machine. You'll be using Premiere, which is actually pretty slick these days, as a matter of fact. For those of us who are watching this later, Adobe released at 1 o'clock the updated version of Creative Cloud. Creative Cloud 2014 was just announced and is available today. And again, they've tweaked it even so it works faster on these machines. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And now what I want to do, oh yeah, I was going to say Final Cut 10, you can export a Final Cut 10 project. There's a program where you can get the XML, that's extensible markup language, or basically the edit decision list. It's called Final Cut 10 to Final Cut 7, but Premiere can open a Final Cut 7 timeline. So it's a very easy way to go back and forth. If you need to bring it back into 10, your client's on 10, so you know, but you're used to working on this fast machine, there's a program called Final Cut 7 to 10, which this will export out a Final Cut 7 timeline, and they can bring it in. So no matter what application your client's using, or if they're Mac or PC, you can talk to them. It's not a big barrier. And they're inexpensive programs, $10 for one, $50 for the other. And it allows you to have communications and leverage all this speed. I don't want to talk to my Mac anymore. I'm done with that. I don't like that producer. Okay? So I'm unplugging them. Tell them to go away. And what I'm going to do actually is plug into my promise rate here. It'll take a second for it to recognize. So I want to show you some of the Thunderbolt workflows that I can use in Premiere. And this is something else that I find is very, very cool about Thunderbolt and this whole ecosystem. Let me go ahead and close this out. Looks like I've been using Windows since I was born. And they didn't have Windows when I was born. They didn't even have DOS 3.1. Okay. We had BASIC and cards, and I'm ancient. But luckily, my parents gave me good genes. I like the fact that using just a single Thunderbolt port, or in some cases where I have two, but I can always daisy chain, I can add a lot of devices and do more than just move data. So what we have here is I have the HP going to this high-speed memory, goes to the AJA box, which is putting out an SDI, or a broadcast signal, to this broadcast monitor. but it has lots of ins and outs. I could send it to the HDMI. I have other Thunderbolt. I have another Thunderbolt port here. So, you know, producer walks in and says, "You need to plug in." Anywhere where there's an open Thunderbolt port in the chain, pop it in. They just all talk to each other. It's beautiful, especially if you came from the world of what I've mentioned a couple times, SCSI, which was SCSI voodoo, as they said, a whole nightmare about termination. So I like that. And if I opened up Premiere here, see it recognized the folder. I don't have to worry about that. See that Premiere running. So right now, with literally, did you see me configuring anything? I plugged in the Thunderbolt cable. Boom. So it saw this drive. It recognized it. It's going through. It sees the AJA box. It's sending it to my monitor. Life is good. So it gives you a lot of flexibility here. And if I wanted to, if I'm in the field, that's where these really cool boxes come into play. You know, there's a variety of them that we saw earlier. But it's one plug. And then this could be connected to USB ports. It could be connected. I could have this in the field and plug my laptop in. So I have a broadcast monitor there, a variety of tools. So that's really nice. And the other thing that's really cool about some of these boxes is maybe I don't have the big honkin' workstation. I can only buy one machine. And it's like, oh, I need the machine for the field. I could get a Thunderbolt box, and I could have all my peripherals there at home. I come in, instead of finding a docking station, one cable. Plug it in, Thunderbolt to the box, and I'm good to go. And then I need to run out, unplug it, run out the door. It's really, really nice. So I like the flexibility and the variety of tools. So it's not just speed, it's monitors, it's breakout boxes, even chassis if you want to put extra PCI cards in, a lot of extra cards. So that's really kind of nice. So let's take a look at, you know, just the ability to play back. This is 4K footage with really huge data rates. I think this one, if I open this up, and I apologize if I turn my back to you for a moment. Well, actually, I don't. So this is a different clip, and actually, this is kind of interesting. This is something called DPX files, and I have this open because I was showing some folks earlier. If I go ahead and hide this video clip, and it's on my Z drive. So if I open up my computer, it looks a little different, but it's kind of like a Mac still for those people. I can say, oh yeah, I want to look at a specific drive. I can just double click on it. I can see what's there. And if I look at this footage, and if you can see up there, it's really just a bunch of still images that were recorded. If you ever seen animation, but you'll see that as, you know, individual frames. This is each frame of video as a high resolution, high color depth file. And it's very easy in Premiere to say, I don't want to look at them as a bunch of still images. I want to look at them as a movie. But I'll tell you, imagine how many people have worked in like Photoshop or opening up any kind of large still images on their computer. Takes a while. Imagine doing that at 24 frames a second. 24 images a second you're trying to open up these big files. You can see the challenge. And that's in essence what we're doing here, is we're playing, instead of a movie, is we're opening up 24 files a second. And this is 4K resolution, and it just plays back. And that's the beauty of it. And I can play it back from the internal drives, and Thunderbolt, it's fast enough to play it back off these RAIDs. Okay, so that's actually pretty cool stuff. Now I'm going to go ahead and open up another clip, because I want you to see the actual data rate associated with some of this video. One of my favorite keyboard shortcuts in Premiere is the tilde key, because I can make everything go full screen. If I wanted to, I can jump back again wherever I'm hovering. So I can see this. And what I want to do is find a piece of footage that's actually a video clip. Here we go. So these are all video clips. I can scrub. So these are all high def. That's still playing on the timeline. So I'm going to go ahead, and the biggest one here is Green City. So I can bring that in. There's my clip. But I want to show you if I open this clip up in QuickTime, it's massive. Control 1 will make it fit. And Control I is a quick way to get information. And if you look in the upper left-hand corner, when I hit play on this, the data rate is 1.65 gigabytes per second. That is obscenely huge. Your streaming videos are probably 3.5 to 5, not gigabytes, but megabytes. So you can see how big this file is. And the cool thing is that even on an external drive, and it goes back to your question about what's the minimum system, or what's the recommended. Never go with minimum system requirement. Always go with recommended, because minimum means you can launch it. But when you see the choices, go with recommended. So this can play back. There we go. I'll make it nice and small. And it's kind of hyper. We've got a little bit of lag there. I don't know why that should be the internal. You have too many things covering my screen. QuickTime doesn't like things to be covered. There we go. But I brought that into my Premiere timeline, and I can go ahead and there we go. Very impatient. Took 2 seconds, and I'm like, why isn't it there yet? You know, oh yeah, it's 1.65 gigabytes per second. So I can work on that. This was shot at 60 frames a second, so it's playing back in slow motion. I could play it back at normal speed, so in other words, we overcranked the camera. So, but it's a huge, huge file, and you'll see there's a little green dot here. And that's one thing in Premiere that indicates if I've dropped any frames. It's a little green dot you can turn on, right where my cursor is. And that tells me if I've dropped frames because of either it's too hard to calculate or the data rate is too big. I'm dragging too many files in. And one of the things that I always find challenging when presenting is it's really hard sometimes to break real time because things work really quickly. Now, most of the time, you're probably not going to be working. This is like the biggest file I could find to be the biggest challenge. And probably with this incredible size file, I probably could break it. Now, I do want to point out for those folks that are used to using other editing systems such as Final Cut 7, that when you see a yellow line, you panic because usually that means you're going to drop frames, like the orange line. And then if it's red, it means that you have to render. It's different in Premiere. Red actually means you may drop frames, but it's going to still play anyway without having to render. Yellow means usually you have a filter or you have a slightly different frame rate from the base frame rate. But it will not drop frames. So yellow just means it's working harder, but it still is not going to drop frames. Red is OK. But I can go ahead and I can easily start processing this, throw filters on it and whatnot. Most of the time, I don't have to render. I find very rarely I need to render because machines are fast enough. I did want to end with one slide that I thought is a really cool example. We won't save that. No need to. Actually, maybe I would. But that's this one. NVIDIA, the video card people, did a test with Premiere. They did 6 channels of 6 layers. They put a bunch of blurs, color correction. And then they rendered it without using the video card. Remember this where I said the video card was important? So without the video card, OK, we're talking 4 minutes and 50 seconds, 5 minutes. Dropped to 1 minute with their slowest card. And if you went all the way up to the K6000, which is what we have in here, 17 seconds versus 5 minutes. So that just shows you the power of a video card when doing video editing, and that if you can offload some of that work from the CPU, you're going to get that much better performance. kind of a whirlwind tour of a variety of things. In summation, the fact that 4K is very doable now. The hardware allows us to do it. If you really need to move, you really need to be able to move files quickly from external devices or connect external devices. The Thunderbolt 2 technology is very cool, and it works on both the Macs and the PC. And Premiere really leverages the power of both of these tools to allow you to edit in real time without transcoding. You can be creative again, and you just export. And I think that's what it ultimately goes down to, is that the tools allow you to be creative without being bottlenecked by the technology or the software. So thank you very much, and we're going to throw it back to Terry, so if you want to come up and take a look at some of the equipment, you can actually get hands-on and then pick our brains.
Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City Superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.